My first day at work was in the early 1970s, believe it or not. And I had secured a place to study to become a chartered accountant, which is the UK equivalent of a CPA. It was called being an articled clerk. I actually paid for the privilege for the first year. And on my very first day, Britain was in the middle of an enormous recession, had been for some time, was going to continue to be for almost 2 years. And I started on my first day and continued for a number of months every single day by using a slide rule. Google that, kids. A thing called a slide rule to recalculate our clients' cash flow projections. Interest rates were hovering between 20 and 30% and changed every single day by considerable amounts. And this was before the era of personal computers. VisiCalc, the first spreadsheet to be invented, was 6-7 years away. A spreadsheet was literally that. It was a sheet of paper that was graphed out. Looked exactly like a spreadsheet does on your screen these days. Desktop calculators hadn't quite made it. They arrived in about a year, 2 years down the line. But there I was with an eraser and a pencil literally every single day for months, recalculating our clients' cash flows as they struggled just to stay afloat during what was a really difficult time. About 5 years later, I qualified as a chartered accountant and struck out on my own and was self-employed, have been ever since then. And so I went through the recession of the 1980s in the UK, and the same in the 1990s. We actually had what was called a double dip recession at that point. I moved here to the US in the late 1990s, and then of course we went through the dot-com bust in the early aughties, as they're being called, which was then heightened by the events of 9/11. And of course, the 2008 to 2012 Great Recession, or whatever you want to call it. I went through all of those, and every time on my own dime, running my own business. And I've also had exposure to those times when there hasn't actually been a major economic headwind, but my own business or businesses have suffered their own particular crises. I've been twice literally in the fetal position. I don't use that phrase metaphorically. Literally on the ground in the fetal position, gripped by an existential fear that I was in the middle of something that wasn't going to get fixed. I've been through those 7 recessions. And as I mentioned, every one of them except the first one, I went through them on my own dime. I experienced them affecting me and my business. And one of the things that thankfully was happening all along was that as I experienced each of those crises, I was more and more becoming to understand and develop what became the predictable success model. And there's a sense in which I learned more in developing predictable success about how to deal with adversity and crisis than I did about how to deal with positive growth times, because those are the times when you learn things. It's just that that's not the aspect of what I learned that I teach most often, because what most people want are the aspects of predictable success that talk about growing and growth, moving forward. But I have discovered that there are 4 absolutely specific, key, imperative aspects of leading any organization, for profit or not for profit, through a crisis. And we're seeing some of those play out just where we are literally today. Those 4 things are, first of all, understanding yourself as a leader intimately in the way that shows you not only what are my strengths that I want to bring to bear here, but also what are my blind spots? What are the things that I'm not seeing? That's so crucially important. Second, it's vital to understand your core team, what we call in predictable success T1, the group of people, whether it's just 2 of you or 20 of you, who are making the core decisions right now. You must know in a clinical sense what your strengths and weaknesses are in a crisis. The third thing that's absolutely crucial is you've got to achieve a forensic understanding of your organization's recent history. That might sound a little academic or arcane, but a lot of what you're going to have to make decisions about right now in the immediate future has to do with unpicking aspects of what your organization has just put in place, ensuring up some things that you've either just put in place or have had for quite a while, absolutely stopping some things, and also starting to do some new things. And you need to know in a forensic manner what you can stop that won't hamper you in rebounding out of this crisis. What you might need to start in order to get out of this crisis. And the final thing that you've got to know is what are sometimes an overwhelming set of potential next steps. What are the next steps that are right for your organization? Not necessarily for the industry or the overall market or the area that you work in or contribute in or that your not-for-profit is in. Not the right steps for an organization like yours. What are the next steps for your organization where it is at the moment to get through and get out of this crisis? Now, I don't often or usually teach those principles, but clearly those are the very principles that most of us, me included, are grappling with. I'm no more exempt from what's going on right now than anyone else. So I'm going to do a free webinar on March 24th, and I'm going to go into great detail about those 4 principles plus 3 subsidiary principles, which I don't have time to talk about in this brief video, on how to lead your organization through this crisis and out the other side. I'm doing it on Tuesday 24th, which is not this Tuesday, but next as we're recording this. There's no immediate rush to register, therefore, but my Zoom channel only does have 100 seats. That's what I pay for each month. So if you want to be sure to get on board, just scroll down and register below. If you can't make it for that time and date, you can register for a replay. There is a small charge for that. But as I say, you want to take the webinar live. It's absolutely free. And I'll teach you the core principles, the very specific principles that you need to adopt to take your organization through and out of the specific crisis that we're facing right now. I hope you'll join me then. My name is McKeown. For now, feel free to scroll down, leave some comments, do register, and I'll see you on the webinar.